He laughed in her face, right there in the crowded hallway of the Los Angeles Superior Court. "You didn't even bring a lawyer? You really are pathetic, Gwen." Derek Hillary adjusted the cuffs of his $5,000 bespoke suit, smirking down at his terrified soon-to-be ex-wife. He thought he had stripped her of everything, her bank accounts, her dignity, her future. He thought she was entirely alone in this fight. But Derek made a fatal calculation. He forgot who her blood really was. He forgot that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's just the calm before the airstrike. When those heavy oak doors finally opened, Derek wasn't just facing a wife he'd scorned. He was about to walk into a specialized operation designed to dismantle his life, piece by arrogant piece. And he never saw it coming. The fluorescent lights of the corridor outside courtroom 304 buzzed with an irritating hum, but it was nothing compared to the noise coming from Derek Hillary. He was leaning against the wall, checking his Rolex Submariner every 30 seconds, radiating the kind of arrogance that only old money and new infidelity could buy. Standing next to him was his attorney, Charles Blackwood. Blackwood was a legend in California divorce law, a shark who didn't just win cases, he eviscerated the opposition. He cost $600 an hour just to breathe the same air as you. And clinging to Derek's arm was Tiffany, his 24-year-old personal assistant turned soulmate, chewing gum and scrolling through Instagram, looking bored. Across the hall, sitting on a hard wooden bench, was Gwen. She wore a simple navy dress she'd had for 5 years. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, knuckles white. She looked small, defeated. "Look at her," Derek scoffed, loud enough for the passing clerks to hear. "She looks like she's waiting for a bus, not a divorce hearing. Hey, Gwen, did you forget the address of the legal aid clinic? Or did even the pro bono lawyers realize you're a lost cause?" Tiffany giggled, not looking up from her phone. "Babe, stop! You're going to make her cry." "She needs to cry," Derek sneered, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper as he walked over to her. He loomed over Gwen, casting a shadow that swallowed her whole. "You should have signed the settlement when I offered it, Gwen. $5,000 and the old Honda. That was generous. Now? Blackwood is going to bury you. I'm taking the house, the portfolio, the cars. Hell, I might even take the dog just to put it in a kennel. You're walking out of here with absolutely zero." Gwen didn't look up. She kept her eyes focused on the scuff marks on the linoleum floor. "I don't want your money, Derek. I just want what's fair." "Fair?" Derek threw his head back and laughed. "Fair is a fairy tale for people who can afford retainers. You have nothing. I froze the joint accounts on Monday. I cancelled your credit cards on Tuesday. You can't even afford to buy a coffee in the cafeteria downstairs, let alone hire someone who can stand up to Blackwood." Mr. Blackwood stepped forward, checking his watch. "Mr. Hillary, save your energy. We don't need to engage. The judge will default the judgment if she's unrepresented and unprepared. This will be over in 10 minutes. You hear that, Gwen?" Derek leaned in close, his cologne, a scent she used to love, now sickeningly sweet, filling her nose. 10 minutes. Then you're officially homeless. I'd say call your mummy for help, but we both know she's just a retired school teacher in Ohio living on a pension. And your brother? What's he doing now? Rotting in some barracks? You have no one." For the first time, Gwen raised her head. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. There was something in them that Derek couldn't quite place. It wasn't fear. It was patience. "My family is busy, Derek," she said softly. "Too busy to save you," he retorted. Just then, the bailiff opened the heavy oak doors. "Hillary versus Hillary. All parties, please enter." Derek straightened his tie, winking at Tiffany. "Showtime. Watch me destroy her." He strutted into the courtroom like he owned the building. He didn't notice that Gwen didn't stand up immediately. She stayed seated on the bench, looking toward the elevator banks at the far end of the hallway. The digital numbers above the elevator were ticking down. Floor 4, floor 3, floor 2. She took a deep breath, stood up, and walked into the courtroom alone. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and stale anxiety. The Honorable Judge Harrison sat behind the high bench, looking over his glasses at the docket. He was a stern man, known for his impatience with courtroom theatrics and his absolute hatred for people wasting the court's time. Case number 49201, Hillary versus Hillary, the clerk announced. Ready for the petitioner, Your Honor. Blackwood boomed, his voice smooth as silk. He stood at the right table, files spread out in an organized display of dominance. Derek sat next to him, legs crossed, looking the picture of confident success. And for the respondent? Judge Harrison looked at the empty table on the left. Gwen stood there, alone. Her table was bare. No files, no notepad. Just a small, slightly crumpled clutch purse. "I'm here, Your Honor," Gwen said, her voice shaking slightly. Judge Harrison frowned, peering over his spectacles. "Ms. Hillary, where is your counsel?" I don't have one present at this exact moment, Your Honor," Gwen admitted. Derek let out a loud, derisive snort. Blackwood nudged him to be quiet, but the lawyer was smiling too. This was blood in the water. "Ms. Hillary," the judge sighed, rubbing his temples. "This is a high-asset divorce case involving complex equity splits, real estate holdings in 3 states, and significant spousal support disputes. Mr. Blackwood has filed 17 motions against you this morning alone. Do you intend to represent yourself?" "No, Your Honor," Gwen said. "Then where is your representation?" "He told me I wouldn't need one," Derek interrupted, unable to help himself. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, my wife is confused. She has no funds. I've tried to be reasonable, but she refuses to accept reality. I move for a default judgment on all counts. She's wasting the court's time." Judge Harrison narrowed his eyes at Derek. "Mr. Hillary, sit down. I speak to the parties. You speak through your attorney." "My apologies, Your Honor," Derek said, sitting down but shooting a triumphant glare at Gwen. "It's over," he mouthed. "Ms. Hillary," the judge continued, "if you cannot afford an attorney, you should have filed for a continuance to seek legal aid. I cannot delay this docket forever." "I don't need legal aid, Your Honor," Gwen said, her voice growing a fraction stronger. "And I don't need a continuance. My counsel has been detained by security downstairs. There was an issue with the metal detectors." "Metal detectors?" Blackwood scoffed under his breath. "Did he bring a chaotic mess of paperwork with staples?" "Something like that," Gwen murmured. "I will give you 5 minutes, Ms. Hillary," Judge Harrison said, glancing at the clock. "If your mysterious lawyer isn't here by 9:15, we proceed with Mr. Blackwood's motions. And I warn you, without counsel, you will likely lose every single objection." The minutes ticked by. The silence in the courtroom was heavy. Derek leaned back in his chair, whispering to Blackwood. "She's lying. She's stalling. She has nobody. She's probably waiting for some mall lawyer she found on a billboard." "It doesn't matter," Blackwood whispered back. "Whoever walks through that door, unless it's the Attorney General himself, they haven't had time to prep. We have boxes of financial discovery they haven't seen. We will crush them on procedure." 9:13 a.m. 9:14 a.m. Derek pulled out his phone under the table and texted Tiffany. "Pop the champagne. She's drowning." 9:15 a.m. "Time is up," Judge Harrison said, banging his gavel once. "Ms. Hillary, we are proceeding. Mr. Blackwood, Your first motion regarding the freezing of the marital assets." "Thank you, Your Honor." Blackwood stood up, buttoning his jacket. "We move to permanently seize the primary residence at 405 Oakwood Drive, as my client purchased it prior to the marriage using—" Boom! The double doors at the back of the courtroom didn't just open. They hit the backstops with a force that shook the gallery benches. Everyone turned. Derek spun around in his chair, ready to laugh at whatever disheveled public defender had finally sprinted in. But he didn't laugh. The smile slid off his face like oil. Standing in the doorway was a man. He was 6'4", built like a tank, wearing a tailored charcoal suit that strained at the shoulders. His hair was a high and tight military cut, graying slightly at the temples. He wasn't carrying a briefcase. He was carrying a tactical wanderer duffel bag in one hand and a thin manila folder in the other. But it wasn't just the man. Walking beside him was an older woman. Derek recognized her. It was Martha, Gwen's mother. But this wasn't the woman he remembered from Thanksgiving dinners, the one who wore knitted sweaters and baked pies. This woman was wearing a sharp, white Chanel power suit, oversized sunglasses, which she slowly removed, and a look of cold, calculated fury. And behind them, two men in dark suits who didn't look like paralegals. They looked like private security. The large man walked down the center aisle. His footsteps were heavy, rhythmic, deliberate. He didn't look at the judge. He didn't look at Gwen. He looked directly at Derek. Derek felt a cold sweat break out on the back of his neck. He knew that face. He hadn't seen it in 10 years since the wedding, but he knew it. "James," Derek whispered. Gwen's brother. The one Derek used to make fun of for being a government grunt. James Ghost. Jenkins stopped at the bar, looked at the bailiff, and nodded respectfully. Then he turned to the judge. "Your Honor," James said. His voice was deep, gravelly, and carried the undeniable weight of command. "Apologies for the delay. We had some trouble clearing my security detail through the checkpoint. My name is Captain James Jenkins, U.S. Navy, retired. And I am entering my appearance as limited counsel for my sister, Mrs. Gwen Hillary." Blackwood chuckled, standing up. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Is this man even a member of the California Bar? You can't just have a soldier march in here and play lawyer." James didn't even look at Blackwood. He calmly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small card, sliding it across the defense table toward the clerk. "JAG Corps for 12 years before I transferred to Special Operations, Mr. Blackwood," James said calmly. "I'm licensed in California, New York, D.C., and currently hold clearance to practice in federal and international courts. I believe my credentials are in order." He turned to his mother, Martha, who was taking a seat in the front row directly behind Gwen. She crossed her legs and stared at Derek. She didn't blink. James turned to Gwen, his face softening for a split second. "You okay, kid?" "I am now," Gwen whispered. James dropped the heavy duffel bag onto the table with a thud that echoed through the room. He unzipped it. It wasn't full of clothes. It was full of hard drives, audio recorders, and stacks of documents stamped with watermarks. He turned to Derek, offering a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was a predator's smile. "So," James said, loud enough for the back row to hear. "I hear you like to bully people who can't fight back, Derek. Why don't you try that with me?" The silence that followed James's introduction was absolute. Even the stenographer stopped typing, her fingers hovering over the keys, waiting for the fallout. Blackwood was the first to recover. He was a professional after all. He buttoned his suit jacket, forcing a tight, condescending smile. "Well, Captain Jenkins, thank you for your service. But this is family court, not a military tribunal in a war zone. We deal with equitable distribution and alimony statutes here. The rules of evidence are quite strict." "I'm aware," James said, walking around the table to stand next to Gwen. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and for the first time in months, Gwen's trembling stopped. She looked up at her big brother, and he gave her a subtle wink. "And speaking of evidence, Your Honor, I'd like to address the motion Mr. Blackwood just made regarding the poverty of my sister." James opened the manila folder. He didn't pull out a piece of paper. He pulled out a photograph. It was grainy, taken with a long-range lens, showing Derek standing on the deck of a yacht, clinking champagne glasses with a man in a linen suit. "Mr. Hillary claims my sister has no claim to the marital assets because, according to his affidavit filed 3 days ago, the business Hillary Architecture is currently insolvent and operating at a loss," James said, his voice level and cold. "That's correct," Blackwood interjected quickly. "The market has been volatile. Mr. Hillary is barely drawing a salary. He is practically destitute, living off savings." James tossed the photo onto the judge's bench. "This photo was taken 48 hours ago in the harbour of St. Kitts. That's Mr. Hillary. The boat he is standing on is the Lady Tiffany, a 60-foot azimuth yacht. Funny name, isn't it? Named after his assistant." Derek went pale. Tiffany, sitting in the gallery, suddenly found her shoes very interesting. "Objection," Blackwood snapped. "Relevance? My client was on a business trip. He doesn't own that boat. It was a charter. Is that so?" James reached into the duffel bag and pulled out a thick stack of stapled documents, dropping them onto the table with a heavy thud. "Because I have here the purchase agreement, dated 3 weeks ago. The buyer is a shell company called Blue Horizon Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands. The signatory for that account, a Mr. Derek Hillary." James picked up another document. "And here is the wire transfer record, $1.2 million, transferred from the insolvent business account of Hillary Architecture to Blue Horizon Holdings on the very same day. Mr. Hillary told my sister there wasn't enough money to pay the electric bill at their home." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Harrison picked up the photo, then the documents James handed to the bailiff. The judge's eyebrows climbed higher and higher. "Mr. Blackwood," Judge Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave, which was a very bad sign. "Did you know about this asset?" Blackwood turned to Derek, his eyes wide with shock. "Derek, you told me the liquidity was 0. You swore under oath in your deposition." It's an investment," Derek stammered, standing up, sweat beading on his forehead. "It's a corporate asset. I needed it to woo clients. It's not personal property." "Sit down, Mr. Hillary," the judge barked. James wasn't done. He walked closer to the plaintiff's table. He moved like a tiger, stalking a wounded gazelle, controlled, lethal, and terrifyingly calm. "Your Honor, Mr. Hillary isn't just hiding a boat," James continued. "He's hiding everything. He mocked my sister for not having a lawyer because he thought he could bury her in paper. He thought she was too poor to hire a forensic accountant. He was right. She couldn't afford one." James leaned in, resting his knuckles on Derek's table. He stared right into Derek's eyes. "But the United States Navy taught me how to track funding for terrorist cells in the Middle East. I know how to find money that people don't want found. And Derek, you are sloppy." James turned back to the judge. "We have identified 5 separate offshore accounts, 1 in the Caymans, 2 in Zurich, and 1 in, interestingly enough, New Jersey. Total hidden assets estimated at $14 million. All diverted during the marriage, all subject to community property laws." "14 million?" Gwen gasped. She looked at Derek with horror. You told me we couldn't afford to fix the heater last winter. You made me sleep in a coat. It was for the future, Derek yelled, losing his composure. My future. I earned it. You just sat at home. Mr. Hillary, silence. Judge Harrison slammed his gavel. Captain Jenkins, these are serious allegations. Do you have proof of ownership for all these accounts? I have the bank routing numbers, the IP addresses used to access them, which match the Wi-Fi at Mr. Hillary's office, and the signature cards, James said. He pulled out 4 more distinct binders from the bag. It's all here, Your Honor, indexed and tabbed. Blackwood looked at the mountain of evidence piling up against his client. He closed his own folder. He knew when a ship was sinking. He looked at Derek with pure disdain. You lied to me, Derek. You just committed perjury in open court and dragged me into it. Fix it, Charles, Derek hissed. That's what I pay you for. You don't pay me enough for jail time, Blackwood muttered, shifting away from him. We move to freeze all assets immediately, James said, including the Lady Tiffany, and we move for Mr. Hillary to surrender his passport, as he has demonstrated both the means and the intent to flee the jurisdiction. Granted, Judge Harrison said instantly. Mr. Hillary, surrender your passport to the bailiff, immediately. I left it at home, Derek lied. Then the bailiff will accompany you to retrieve it, the judge said. Captain Jenkins, continue. You said you had a limited appearance. You seem quite prepared for a full trial. James smiled. Oh, the financial fraud is just the appetizer, Your Honor. The main course is why my mother is sitting in the front row. You see, Derek didn't just steal from Gwen. He made a very, very bad business decision involving my family. Derek scoffed, trying to regain some ground. Your family? Please. Your mother is a retired math teacher. What could I possibly have done to her? Forgot to return a Tupperware container? James turned to the gallery and nodded at Martha. The older woman stood up. She smoothed her white Chanel suit. She didn't look like a math teacher anymore. She looked like a queen regarding a peasant who had stepped on her robe. James, Martha said, her voice clear and sharp. May I approach? Judge? James asked. Judge Harrison was fascinated. Proceed. Martha walked through the gate. She didn't go to the witness stand. She stood next to James. Hello, Derek, she said. Martha, Derek sneered. Look, I'm sorry Gwen is losing, but dressing up in a nice suit doesn't change the facts. Go back to Ohio. I haven't lived in Ohio for 10 years, Derek, Martha said calmly. And you're right. I was a math teacher. I taught advanced calculus and statistics. I was very good at numbers. I was also very good at spotting patterns. So what? So, Martha continued, when my late husband passed, he left me a small life insurance policy. I didn't put it in a savings account. I invested it. I was an angel investor in a little startup in Silicon Valley back in the 90s. A former student of mine started it. He needed seed money. I gave him $20,000. Derek rolled his eyes. Good for you. You made a few bucks. That company, James interrupted, was called Nexus Dynamics. They were bought out by Google 3 years ago. The room went silent. Everyone knew Nexus Dynamics. I cashed out my shares for a considerable sum, Martha said, examining her manicured nails. And since then, I've been bored. So, I started a private equity firm. It's called MJ Capital. Maybe you've heard of it? Derek stopped breathing. His mouth fell open. His eyes bugged out of his head. MJ Capital? He choked out. Yes, Martha smiled sweetly. The same MJ Capital that holds the commercial mortgage on your office building in downtown LA. The same MJ Capital that bought the promissory note on your business loans last month when your bank tried to offload your risky debt. Derek grabbed the table to steady himself. No, that's impossible. The CEO of MJ Capital is a recluse. No one sees her. You never asked, Martha said. You were too busy making fun of my pension at Christmas dinner to ask what I actually did with my time. You see, Derek, you are currently 3 months behind on your commercial mortgage, and technically, since I own the note on your business loans, and you just admitted to diverting business funds to buy a yacht, that is a breach of covenant. She leaned forward, her face inches from his. I can call in the full amount of the loan. Today. Right now. $12 million. Do you have it, Derek? Derek looked at Blackwood. Blackwood was busy packing his briefcase, looking like he wanted to teleport to another planet. I can pay. I just need time, Derek stammered. You don't have time, James said, crossing his arms. You have 5 minutes before my mother makes a phone call to her legal team to initiate foreclosure proceedings on your business headquarters. You will be evicted by Monday. Your reputation will be trash. Your clients will leave. Unless, Derek whispered, realizing he was completely trapped. Unless, James said, we settle this divorce right now. On our terms. The air in the courtroom had shifted so drastically that the pressure was almost physical. 10 minutes ago, Derek Hillary had been the king of the jungle, toying with a wounded animal. Now, he was the carcass, and the lions were circling. Derek slumped into his chair, the expensive fabric of his suit suddenly feeling like a straitjacket. He looked at Tiffany in the gallery. She was typing furiously on her phone, probably calling an Uber, or looking for a new boyfriend. Rats were always the first to leave a sinking ship. Mr. Hillary, Judge Harrison said, breaking the stunned silence. The judge was struggling to hide a smirk. It seems your financial situation is more complex than previously stated. If MJ Capital calls in your loans, does Hillary Architecture survive? No, Your Honor, Derek whispered, his voice cracking. It would be immediate bankruptcy. Then I suggest you listen to Captain Jenkins's terms, the judge advised dryly. Blackwood leaned over to Derek. Take the deal, he hissed. Whatever they want, just take it. If they foreclose, I don't get paid my retainer, and I will personally sue you for the rest. Derek nodded weakly. He looked at Gwen. She was staring at her mother and brother with wide, incredulous eyes. She had known James was capable. He was a SEAL after all. But she had no idea about Martha. The school teacher mask had been so perfect that even her own daughter hadn't realized the extent of the empire Martha had built. Mum, Gwen whispered, you own his building? I own the whole block, honey, Martha winked. I bought it last year. I was planning to tell you at Christmas, but this seemed like a more fun time. James cleared his throat, bringing the focus back to the kill. Here is the settlement agreement, he said, pulling a crisp, stapled document from his folder. He slid it across the table to Blackwood. Blackwood put on his reading glasses and scanned it. His eyes widened. Captain Jenkins, this is extreme. Read it out loud, James commanded. Blackwood sighed. The terms are as follows. Mr. Hillary agrees to transfer full title of the marital home to Mrs. Hillary, mortgage-free. Mr. Hillary agrees to pay a lump sum alimony of $2 million immediately, drawn from the offshore accounts you identified. Mr. Hillary agrees to cover all legal fees for both parties. And Blackwood paused, choking on the words. And? Derek asked, terrified. And, Blackwood read, Mr. Hillary agrees to resign as CEO of Hillary Architecture, appointing a board-approved successor, in exchange for MJ Capital restructuring the debt to prevent immediate bankruptcy. "Resign!" Derek shouted, jumping up. "That's my company. I built it. You can't take my company." "Technically, the bank owns your company, Derek," Martha said coolly. "And I own the banknotes, so I own the company. You are just a liability. A CEO who embezzles funds to buy yachts is bad for business. You're fired." "You can't do this," Derek screamed. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this is blackmail. They're holding my business hostage." "It sounds like a standard restructuring agreement to me," Judge Harrison shrugged. "Capitalism can be harsh, Mr. Hillary. You of all people should know that. You were quite fond of telling your wife she had nothing just 20 minutes ago." Derek looked around the room. He saw the bailiff standing by the door, hand on his belt. He saw the court reporter shaking her head in disgust. He saw Gwen, looking stronger than she ever had. "I won't sign it," Derek spat. "I'll fight you. I'll drag this out for years. You think you can bully me?" James sighed, a sound of deep disappointment. He checked his watch. "I was hoping we wouldn't have to do the Part B, Derek, but you are a stubborn man." James turned to the back of the room. "Agent Miller, you can come in now." The back doors opened again. This time it wasn't family. 2 men in blue windbreakers walked in. The yellow letters on the back were unmistakable. FBI. Derek froze. His legs gave out, and he collapsed back into his chair. "What is this?" Blackwood asked, stepping away from the table entirely. "I am withdrawing as counsel. Right now. I am not part of this." One of the FBI agents walked through the gate. He nodded to James. "Thanks for the tip, Captain Jenkins. The intel on the wire transfers was spot on." The agent looked at Derek. "Derek Hillary." Yes? "We have a warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud, tax evasion, and violation of the RICO Act involving money laundering through international shell companies." "RICO?" Derek squeaked. "That's for mobsters." "And for architects who wash money for the wrong people in Belize," James said. "Did you think I was just looking at your bank accounts, Derek? I looked at who was paying you. You took money from the cartel to develop resorts that never got built. That's how you got rich so fast." Gwen gasped. "Derek, drug money? I didn't know," Derek cried, tears streaming down his face now. "They were just investors. They paid in cash. I didn't ask questions." "Willful ignorance is not a defense," the FBI agent said, pulling out handcuffs. "Stand up, Mr. Hillary. Place your hands behind your back." The click of the handcuffs echoed through the silent courtroom. It was the loudest sound in the world. Derek was sobbing now, a messy, ugly sound. "Gwen, please, tell them to stop. I'm your husband. We had good times, right? Gwen!" Gwen stood up. She walked over to him. She looked at the man who had tormented her for years, the man who had made her feel small and worthless. She looked at the handcuffs. She looked at his tear-streaked face. "You're right, Derek," she said softly. "We did have good times, but like you said, that was before I realized I was a lost cause." She turned to the FBI agent. "Get him out of here." "No, Gwen, Tiffany, call someone," Derek yelled as he was dragged away, but Tiffany was already gone. The gallery bench where she had been sitting was empty. The heavy door slammed shut behind Derek Hillary, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. James exhaled and cracked his neck. "Well, that went well." Judge Harrison cleared his throat. "Captain Jenkins, while I appreciate the efficiency of your methods, the court still has a docket to clear. Since the respondent has been arrested, I am granting a default judgment in favor of Mrs. Hillary on all counts requested in your settlement proposal. The house is hers. The alimony is granted, if you can find the funds before the feds seize them." We already put a lien on the clean assets, Your Honor, Martha said. Gwen will be fine. I suspect she will, the judge said, smiling at Gwen. Case closed. The gavel banged. Gwen felt her knees go weak. She sat down, burying her face in her hands. She wasn't crying out of sadness. She was crying from the sheer release of 1,000 pounds of pressure lifting off her chest. Martha sat next to her, wrapping an arm around her. It's over, baby. He can't hurt you anymore. James packed his bag, zipping up the files. Not quite over, Mum. We still have to deal with the fallout. The press is going to be all over this. Prominent architect arrested in court. We need to get Gwen out of here before the vultures circle. Where do we go? Gwen asked, wiping her eyes. The house. It'll be surrounded. We're not going to the house, James said, hoisting the duffel bag over his shoulder. We're going to the safe house. Safe house? Gwen asked. You have a safe house in Los Angeles? James grinned. Let's just say Mum's real estate portfolio includes a few places that aren't on Zillow. Come on, the car is waiting. They walked out of the courtroom, a united front. But as they stepped into the hallway, Gwen stopped. Standing by the elevator wasn't a reporter. It wasn't the paparazzi. It was a man in a dark suit, leaning against the wall, watching them. He had a scar running down his cheek and eyes that looked like broken glass. He wasn't FBI. He wasn't police. He looked at James, and James stopped dead in his tracks. The playful brotherly demeanor vanished. The soldier was back. James moved his hand slowly toward his waistband, shielding Gwen with his body. Ghost, the scarred man said, his voice like grinding stones. Long time. Viper, James replied, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I thought you were dead in Damascus. I'm hard to kill, the man named Viper said. He pushed off the wall. You made a lot of noise in there, Ghost. Arresting Hillary. That was a mistake. My employers aren't happy you interrupted their money laundering operation. James tensed. Your employers can file a complaint with the Department of Defense. They prefer to file complaints with bullets, Viper said. He glanced at Gwen, then at Martha. Nice family. Shame if they got caught in the crossfire. James didn't blink. He didn't reach for a weapon, because in a courthouse hallway, that was a death sentence. Instead, he shifted his weight, putting himself squarely between the man named Viper and his mother. Gwen, James said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Take Mom. Go to the elevator. Press the button for the garage. Don't look back. Don't stop. James? Gwen's voice trembled. Who is he? Go! James barked. Martha didn't argue. She grabbed Gwen's arm with a grip of iron and pulled her toward the elevator bank. As the doors slid open, Gwen caught one last glimpse of her brother, staring down the scarred man. Inside the elevator, the silence was suffocating. Mum, what is going on? Gwen demanded, her hands shaking. Derek is arrested. We won, but who was that man? And why does James know him? Martha adjusted her sunglasses, though her hand was trembling slightly. James didn't just peel potatoes in the Navy, Gwen. You know that. There are parts of his life he kept from us to keep us safe. That man, he's a ghost from a past James thought he buried. The elevator dinged at the parking garage level B2. We need to move, Martha said. The car is in spot 402. They stepped out into the dim, concrete garage. It was quiet. Too quiet. Mrs. Hillary, a voice called out. Gwen jumped. Two large men in black suits were waiting by a blacked-out Mercedes G-Wagon. One of them opened the back door. Get in, the guard said urgently. Captain Jenkins signaled a code red. Code red? Gwen asked, climbing into the heavy armored vehicle. Is that bad? It means immediate extraction, Martha said, sliding in beside her. Driver, where is James? He's taking the stairs, Ma'am, He said not to wait. He said he'd meet us at the safe harbor. As the engine roared to life, a deep, guttural growl of a V8 engine, the stairwell door across the garage burst open. James sprinted out. He had lost his suit jacket. His tie was gone, and he was moving with a speed that defied his size. "Go! Go!" James yelled, diving toward the moving SUV. The back door was still cracked open. James threw himself inside just as the driver floored it. Bang! A gunshot echoed through the concrete cavern. The rear window of the G-Wagon spider-webbed but didn't shatter. Bulletproof glass. Gwen screamed, ducking down. "Drive!" James roared, pulling a Sig Sauer P226 from a holster at his ankle, a gun he must have retrieved from the car earlier. The driver swerved around a concrete pillar, tires screeching. Through the rear windshield, Gwen saw the man named Viper, standing calmly in the middle of the lane, lowering a suppressed pistol. He didn't run. He just watched them leave. "He's not chasing us," James said, breathing hard. He checked the magazine of his weapon. "He's tracking us." "James, tell me what is happening," Gwen shouted. "Derek was just a greedy architect. How did this turn into a shootout?" James looked at his sister. His face was grim. "Derek wasn't just greedy, Gwen. He was stupid. The money he was hiding, the 14 million, it wasn't profit from his business. It was skimmed." "Skimmed from who?" "From the Baja cartel," James said. "He was laundering money for them through his real estate projects. But Derek got greedy. He started taking a handling fee he wasn't authorized to take. He stole $14 million from the most dangerous drug syndicate in Mexico." Gwen felt the blood drain from her face. "So, that man." "Viper is a cleaner," James explained. "He works for the highest bidder. The cartel hired him to get their money back and kill the thief. But now Derek is in FBI custody. He's untouchable for now." "So why is he after us?" Martha asked, her voice steady but cold. James looked at Gwen. "Because, thanks to our little courtroom victory, Gwen legally owns all of Derek's assets now." Gwen gasped. "The money, the accounts." "You own them," James said, "which means in the eyes of the cartel, you have their money, and Viper is coming to collect." The drive took 40 minutes. They didn't go to Gwen's house in the suburbs. They headed west, toward the coast, winding up the narrow, treacherous roads of the Malibu canyons. They pulled up to a massive iron gate that looked more like the entrance to a military base than a home. The driver punched in a code, and the gates swung open. The house was a fortress of concrete and glass, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It was stark, modern, and imposing. "Whose house is this?" Gwen asked as they hurried inside. "Mine," Martha said, tossing her purse on a marble countertop. Gwen spun around. "Yours?" "Mum, we lived in a 2-bedroom condo in Ohio. You clipped coupons for tuna." "I liked that condo," Martha shrugged, walking to a hidden panel in the wall. She pressed her hand against it, and a section of the wall slid back to reveal a bank of security monitors. "And coupons are just sensible. But yes, I bought this place 3 years ago under an LLC. It's my retreat." James was already in motion. He was pacing the living room, talking on a satellite phone. "Yeah, I need a perimeter. Full squad. I don't care about the jurisdiction. Just get them here. Authorization code Zulu X-Ray 9. He hung up and turned to the women. "Okay, we have about an hour before Viper figures out where we are. He's good, but my security protocols are better. This house is a Faraday cage. No signals in or out unless we allow it. We're safe for the moment." Gwen sank onto a white leather sofa, her head spinning. "I don't understand. Derek, he was just a boring, arrogant man. He played golf. He complained about the pool boy. How was he mixed up with cartels? Ego, James said, pouring himself a glass of water. Derek wanted to be a billionaire. He met the wrong people at a yacht club in Miami. They offered him easy money to run construction projects that didn't exist. He thought he was smarter than them. He thought he could steal from the cookie jar and no one would notice. And now he's in jail, Gwen said. Doesn't that solve it? No, James said, because the money isn't in the bank accounts we found. Gwen blinked. What? You said in court. I lied, James said flatly. I told the court we found the accounts to get the judgment. And we did find accounts. But they were empty. Derek moved the money again. Moved it where? That's the $14 million question, James said. The FBI thinks they have it, but they don't. Derek hid the access keys. If the cartel doesn't get that money back, they will kill everyone Derek ever spoke to. That includes you. So we need to find the money and give it back, Gwen asked. No, Martha interrupted. We find the money, and we use it as leverage to get the feds to put you in witness protection. Or we use it to buy Viper off. Viper doesn't take payoffs to stop a contract, Mum, James said. He finishes the job. That's why he's Viper. James walked over to the window, looking out at the ocean. Derek is a creature of habit. He's arrogant, but he's sentimental about his trophies. If I were Derek, and I had a digital ledger worth $14 million, I wouldn't put it in a safety deposit box. I'd put it somewhere I could look at it every day and feel rich. The yacht, Gwen whispered. James turned. The Lady Tiffany? He loved that boat, Gwen said, a memory surfacing. He wouldn't shut up about it. But he said something weird when he bought it. He said he was going to christen it with the foundation of his future. James's eyes narrowed. The foundation. He insisted on custom renovations, Gwen continued, her mind racing. He redesigned the master cabin himself. He said he wanted a captain's wall, made of specific mahogany. Mahogany, James muttered. He pulled out his phone and pulled up the blueprints of the yacht he had hacked earlier. The Lady Tiffany is docked in Marina del Rey. It's currently seized by the U.S. Marshals, which means it's sitting under police tape. If the ledger is on that boat, Martha said, and the feds find it, they seize the money. The cartel doesn't get paid. They still come after Gwen for losing their shipment. And if Viper gets there first, James said, he takes the money and kills Gwen to tie up loose ends. So we have to get to the boat first, Gwen said. She stood up. Her fear was being replaced by adrenaline. We have to break into a boat that is under federal seizure, find a hidden ledger, and escape before a hitman kills us? James grinned. It was the same grin he used to have when they were kids, and he convinced her to jump off the garage roof. That's the mission, James said. But we can't just walk in. The marshals have a patrol. I can distract them, Martha said. James and Gwen looked at her. How? James asked. Martha smiled, walking over to a closet. She opened it to reveal tactical gear. No, not tactical gear. High-end disguises, wigs, uniforms, badges. I didn't just invest in tech companies, James, Martha said, pulling out a heavy, official-looking ID badge. I also sit on the board of the Port Authority. I have inspection clearance for any vessel in the harbour. James laughed, shaking his head. Mum, you are terrifying. I'm a mother, she corrected. We do what is necessary. James turned to Gwen. Okay. Mum gets us past the gate. I handle the security. Gwen, you know Derek. You know where he hides things. You're the search team. Me? Gwen pointed to herself. I'm not a spy. You're the only one who understands how his mind bends, James said. He reached into his bag and slid a Kevlar vest across the table. "Wear this. It goes under your sweater." Gwen weighed the vest in her hands, surprised by its heft. "We're really doing this." "We're ending it," James replied. "Tonight. We get the ledger, deliver it to the FBI on our terms, and Viper goes away. One way or another." Martha didn't look up from the security monitors. "We have a complication." James turned. "What kind?" A sleek black drone hovered on the screen near the estate's gate, its red light blinking steadily. "He found us," James muttered. "Tracker on the G-Wagon." Gwen swallowed. "How long?" "If the drone's here, the breach team's 5 minutes out," James said. He grabbed a set of keys. "New plan. We leave now. Back exit. Ducati." "The Ducati?" Gwen stared at him. "There are 3 of us." "Martha takes the Aston," James said, tossing the keys to his mother. "You're with me. We split up, confuse the tail. Marina del Rey, Dock 42. The helicopter's distant thump followed them as they ran. Whatever illusions Gwen had clung to about her mother's quiet retirement or her own uncomplicated divorce evaporated. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was prey. Marina del Rey lay black and gleaming, yacht lights swaying like distant stars. At Dock 42 sat the Lady Tiffany, wrapped in yellow U.S. Marshal tape, less a boat than a floating crime scene. Martha skidded to a stop at the checkpoint, flashing a Port Authority badge with practiced fury. "Open the gate! That vessel has a fuel leak. If it hits the water, it's an EPA disaster, and I'll personally end your career." While the Marshal faltered, 2 figures emerged silently from the water. James and Gwen hauled themselves onto the swim platform, soaked and breathless. 3 minutes, James whispered, drawing his weapon. They moved fast and low. James picked the lock to the salon with surgical ease. Downstairs, the master cabin gleamed with mirrors and gold, Derek's shrine to himself. On the far wall, a seamless mahogany panel. "That's it," Gwen said. James searched for a mechanism. "Electronic. Needs a trigger." Gwen's eyes landed on a framed photo, Derek shaking hands with the mayor. She tilted it, then felt behind the frame, a recessed button. Click. The panel opened, revealing a compact server rack and a single silver USB drive. "The ledger," James breathed. "Don't touch it." They froze. Viper stood in the doorway, dripping wet, suppressor raised. He smiled. "I knew you'd lead me to it." "You fire that gun," James said calmly, hands raised, "and the marshals storm this place." "That's why it's quiet," Viper said. "Kick the drive over. The sister lives." James glanced at Gwen, a nearly invisible nod. "Do it." She grabbed a crystal decanter and hurled it. Not at Viper, but at the light switch. The cabin went dark. Chaos erupted. Furniture splintered. Shots hissed. Bullets punched into wood inches from Gwen's head. The lights flickered back on. James and Viper were on the floor, locked together. A knife hovered over James's throat, inching closer. Gwen saw the gun near the bed. She grabbed it, hands trembling. "Stop!" she cried. Viper laughed. "You won't shoot. You're just a housewife." And for the first time, Gwen wasn't sure he was right. "I'm not a housewife," Gwen said, her voice trembling, but finding a core of steel she didn't know she possessed. "I'm a Hillary, and I'm taking everything back." She didn't aim for Viper's head. She aimed for the porthole window behind them. Bang! The sound was deafening in the small space. The reinforced glass shattered. Viper flinched, distracted for a split second by the explosion of noise. That was all James needed. He twisted his hips, bucked Viper off him, and reversed the hold. There was a sickening crack as James broke Viper's wrist. Viper howled, dropping the knife. James rolled, delivered a devastating elbow to Viper's temple, and the hitman collapsed, unconscious. James lay there for a second, panting, blood dripping from a cut on his eyebrow. He looked at Gwen. She was still holding the gun, smoke curling from the barrel. "Nice shot," James wheezed. "I missed," Gwen admitted, lowering the weapon. "Let's go with tactical distraction," James grinned, pushing himself up. "Grab the drive, we're leaving." 3 days later. The visitation room at the Federal Correctional Institution in Lompoc was grey and depressing. Derek Hillary sat on the other side of the plexiglass. He looked terrible. His hair was unwashed, he had bags under his eyes, and his arrogance had been replaced by a desperate, twitchy fear. Gwen sat on the other side. She wore a new suit, white like her mother's. She looked radiant. "Gwen!" Derek grabbed the phone. "Gwen, you have to help me. They denied bail. They're saying I'm a flight risk. You have to tell them I didn't know about the money laundering." Gwen picked up the phone slowly. "Hello, Derek." "Gwen, please," he begged. "Sell the house. Hire Blackwood back. Get me out of here. I can fix this. We can go back to how it was." "We can't," Gwen said calmly, "because I gave the drive to the FBI." Derek froze. The drive? The yacht?" "James found it." Gwen lied effortlessly. "We handed it over yesterday. The FBI was very grateful. It contained the entire ledger of the Baja Cartel's operations on the West Coast. Names, dates, bank accounts." You gave them the ledger," Derek whispered, his face going white. "Do you know what you've done? The cartel, they'll kill me inside. If they know I kept records." "I know," Gwen said. "I made sure the FBI knew it was your secret insurance policy. It's all over the news, Derek. Architect turned informant turns state's evidence. You're a hero." "No," Derek slumped back. "If they think I'm a snitch, I'm a dead man." "Well," Gwen said, checking her watch, "you should have thought about that before you stole $14 million and tried to leave me on the street with nothing." She stood up. "Gwen, wait. What about the house? What about the money?" "The house is mine," she said. "I'm selling it. Mom and I are starting a new venture, a foundation for women who need legal assistance." "You can't leave me here," Derek screamed, slamming his fist against the glass. Gwen leaned in, her breath fogging the glass. "I didn't leave you, Derek. I beat you." She hung up the phone and walked out. Outside, the sun was shining. A black SUV was waiting. James was leaning against it, wearing sunglasses and a sling on his arm. Martha was in the back seat, reviewing stock reports. "How did it go?" James asked, opening the door for her. "He cried," Gwen said. "Good," James nodded. "And the other matter?" "The reward money from the FBI for the recovery of the cartel assets," Gwen said, pulling a check from her purse. $2.5 million, legal and clean. "Not bad for a week's work," James laughed. "And Viper?" "In a black site somewhere in Nevada," James said. "He won't be bothering anyone again." Gwen looked back at the prison. She thought about the woman she was a week ago, scared, small, voiceless. That woman was gone. She climbed into the car. "Where to, Mrs. Hillary?" the driver asked. Gwen smiled. "It's Miss Jenkins now, and take us to the airport. I believe my brother promised me a vacation." As the car drove away, leaving the prison in the dust, Gwen Hillary finally realized the truth. She hadn't needed a lawyer. She just needed to remember who she was. And that is how Gwen Hillary went from a hopeless victim to the owner of an empire, proving that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one you overlook. Derek thought he could crush her because she was quiet, but he forgot that silence is where the predator hides. He lost his freedom, his fortune, and his future because he underestimated the power of family and the wrath of a woman scorned. So, here is the question for you guys. If you were in Gwen's shoes, would you have handed the drive to the FBI, or would you have tried to keep the 14 million for yourself? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes revenge and karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. We drop new dramas every Tuesday and Friday. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you step on. They might just be the ground that swallows you whole.